Have you ever heard of phrases like killing the ego, dissolving the ego death, all these different things that we might hear in spiritual or psychological contexts? I know I have, and I've always kind of cringed at the fact that I'm supposed to kill off a part of myself. It didn't really make sense to me. And the deeper I dove into my own research and understanding through my own self and experience, and then also working with others, I started realizing that the ego, or the concept of the ego, is so much greater and so much more loving, in a sense, even to understand. And in this video, I want to talk about three different ideas or three different selves that are important to understand when it comes to our own self development, our own spiritual growth, our own psychological, personal development. Because when we can understand these three different selves or concepts of ourself in our inner world, which the ego, one of them is the ego, we can move more toward understanding of ourselves, we can increase our awareness of ourselves, and we can move more toward our potential and grow essentially as these human beings that have the capacity to grow and to expand and to learn and to come even fuller into our true nature and create the lives that we want. So what I'm drawing on from this explanation, I guess you can say, of these different three selves is from the works of Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber is an American philosopher. He's a psychologist, and he has developed something called integral theory. And integral theory is this holistic perspective of human consciousness and integrates all different aspects of psychology and philosophy and sociology and ecology and politics, and kind of takes this whole integrative approach to human consciousness and experience. And understanding his theory is kind of complex and complicated, and I'll be real, I don't understand fully all of it by any means, but there are certain things that he says that I'm just like, wow, that really, really lands, and I want to understand more. And some of the stuff that he explains has to do with these three selves, which is what I'm going to go into now. So according to Wilber, we have these three selves. Number one is our true self. It's our infinite core self. It's our soul essence. It's the part of us that is divine and connected to the oneness with God. And it's infinite and it's eternal, right? And then we have our limited self, which we can describe as our ego. And our ego is limited in the sense that we have an ego that's in this body, and we have these human experiences of separation, and I'm different from other people, and the ego is this like identity of self, like I am different from others, and it's like this self-identity essentially that's differentiated from others around me. And then the third one is the ego, but it's the ego that's unhealthy. It's the ego that is semi-broken in the sense that it is underdeveloped, or it has experienced things that has caused it to fragment and caused it to be in survival. We'll find this when it comes to different protective mechanisms that we find within ourselves, like an inner critic, or a perfectionist, or a people pleaser, or it's just this sense that it's an inaccurate idea of or picture of who we are. Like if I have a self-image that I'm much lesser than other people, or I'm inferior in some way. Or it's on the opposite, like I'm way greater than everyone else. I'm so much more, I'm so much smarter. I have so much more potential. Like I'm better in some way. It's inflated, right? So the ego in this aspect of an unhealthy ego is often comes from trauma, often comes from life circumstances. It comes from societal beliefs and belief systems. And we have to make space for all different all these three different parts: the true self, the infinite self, and the more limited self, which is the ego, which also has this healthy aspect to it, meaning that it is this like, yes, I'm different from other people and I have a healthy sense of self that's grounded in reality. Yes, I know I'm Ingrid and I'm a woman and I have this sense of identity and like strength and who I am. And with that, also with that healthy ego, I can also be fluid. I can know that I'm a personal trainer and an embodiment coach, and that might change over time. That identity might change over time. I'm not fixated or rigid with it. I'm not identified with it, right? And I also have the capacity to be to empathize with others. I have the capacity to know that I'm wrong sometimes and to learn from my mistakes, and that it's okay for me to be presented with new ideas that contradict what I used to believe before. I'm not so holding on to my past identity or an identity that I can't be open to new ideas and new ways of looking at things, right? It's more flexible, right? And then again, the unhealthy ego, the survival ego, the broken ego, where our sense of self might have been disturbed in some way at some point based on our experience, based on what we learned from our environment, our caregivers, from school. Someone said that we were bad at art, for example, and then we created this image of ourselves, this identity that I'm bad at art, I can't do art, I'm not creative, right? Like that's just a kind of a silly example, but it's true. And these can be on all different sides of the spectrum of what that might look like for each and every one of us. And I used the example before of inner critic or perfectionist or people pleaser, where these are also parts of our ego that are kind of broken, fragmented. They are in survival. They're trying to protect me from hurt of the past, essentially. And they're correlated with my nervous system responses, right? I'm kind of looking for ways to criticize myself because I don't have a deeper belief that I'm not good enough. Again, kind of all indications of an unhealthy, underdeveloped ego that just needs help and awareness in order to develop and in order to come into their healthy aspect. And in addition to that, it's kind of like the unhealthy ego that will abandon its own needs, our own needs, and our own feelings in order to feel safe in our environment, for example. That is also an unhealthy aspect because we're not grounded in our healthy sense of self. Like, I know what I believe in. I know who I am. I feel this sense of I amness within me, and it doesn't matter what other people say. I can be open to their opinion. I can take in their opinion. That doesn't threaten my sense of self. Well, I'm also grounded in my sense of self. This all needs awareness. And when we kind of bring it back to, say, the true self and understanding our true self, our true nature, our divine nature, the connection that we are to our God, this power that we are at our core, and all the potential that comes from being in connection with that ocean that's underneath and beyond our ego and the limited self. The way that we kind of get in contact with that are through different experiences like meditation, or we'll have different like spiritual experiences that will kind of get in contact with this. But then also knowing that, even though we know that we are a soul at our core that is connected to God, and we need that connection, we need that as our North Star, and that kind of like, I know that I'm unbreakable and infinite, and I can do really incredible things with my life if I choose to do so. While also being grounded in our sense of identity and like a healthy ego, like a groundedness that, I'm not going to float off into the universe somewhere and, start making, become Harry Potter and I can start doing magic tricks. But there's, there might be like some truth to that, right? But it's like we're grounded in reality and physical the 3D world, right? And this takes, like I said, self-awareness. So what I want to leave you with is kind of questioning perhaps, like, where are you in unhealthy ego, where it's kind of survival ego, where you're feeling like you're less than or more than other people, or you have this inner critic part of you that's perhaps fragmented and started being there at some certain point in time because it's believing that it's protecting you in some way from hurt. And start working with those parts, the kind of the separated parts of us that just need, in essence, to start they just need understanding and they need compassion so that they can feel like they can integrate into our wholeness. And I know these are big words and stuff like that. If you're not following, that's totally fine. Totally fine. I'll keep coming back to these things and make it more and more understandable. But integrating those broken aspects of ourselves into our wholeness and into creating a healthy sense of identity and groundedness in who we are, the identity that we have the capacity to be flexible and compassionate toward ourselves, towards others. We don't abandon our needs, while also feeling open to other perspectives and other people and empathy and all those different things. Again, grounded in my sense of self. While I'm at it, I don't compromise, just in order to feel safety with other people, stuff like that. And then underneath all of it, beyond all of it, is our true self, the soul, the essence of who we are, the connection to the divine, to God, to infinite, eternal potential. I hope that this made sense. I hope it landed at some place in your soul, in your own ego, your own understanding of yourself. And like I said, I'll be coming more and more back to these concepts as I find them so, so interesting and fascinating.